The wedding is off. I don't love you anymore. Cassius said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. The low hum of the Saturday afternoon crowd at the Italian bistro in Buckhead, Atlanta, died down instantly. I felt about 30 pairs of eyes swivel toward our table by the window, the specific one he had requested upon arrival. I froze, my fork hovering over my plate of chicken parmesan. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. At the table next to us, his boys, friends he had insisted on inviting for what he called a casual weekend lunch, watched with barely disguised anticipation. My name is Vesper, and I am 27 years old. In that moment, sitting across from the man I had shared 4 years of my life with, something inside me shifted silently. It wasn't a thunderous break. It was more like the soft click of a lock finally engaging. I set the fork down carefully on the plate. Cassius was looking at me with an expression I had seen before but only fully recognized right then, a mix of satisfaction and anticipation, like a child waiting to see what happens after pulling the wings off a butterfly. "Thank you for being honest," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. His eyebrows shot up a fraction. That wasn't the reaction he had imagined. I brought my left hand to the engagement ring, the same one he had used to propose at his parents' anniversary dinner 2.5 years ago, also ensuring everyone was watching then, too. I slid it off slowly and tucked it into the inner pocket of my blazer. "You know what?" I continued, feeling a strange calm beginning to spread through me. "I think I'm going to throw a great escape party." One of his friends let out a stifled chuckle, and then a few others laughed. Cassius's smile widened.
He was enjoying this.
I realized he had choreographed this moment, chosen this venue, and invited these witnesses just to watch me crumble in public. But I didn't crumble. "A great escape party," I repeated, more for myself than anyone else. "Yes, I think this calls for it." The laughter at his friend's table began to fade when they noticed I wasn't crying, I wasn't raising my voice, and I wasn't making the scene Cassius clearly expected. Instead, I picked up my water glass and took a slow, deliberate sip. "Love me anymore. The wedding is off. I believe I already thanked you for your honesty." His jaw tightened. The script was falling apart in front of everyone. I pulled my wallet from my purse and left enough cash on the table to cover my share of the meal, plus a generous tip for the waitress, who would undoubtedly have a good story to tell at the end of her shift. "I have to tell you, Cassius, you picked an interesting stage for this announcement," I commented, standing up and gathering my things. "A packed restaurant Saturday afternoon. Your boys conveniently here to witness it all. Very theatrical." His face grew taut. "I thought you deserved the truth." "And I got it," I answered simply. "More truth than you perhaps intended to show." I glanced at his friends, Tarek, Omari, and Dante, who were now exchanging awkward looks. The amusement had been wiped from their faces, replaced by something bordering on confusion. "Gentlemen," I said, nodding my head, "thank you for being here today. Your presence has been very revealing." As I walked toward the exit, I felt the weight of every gaze in the restaurant on my back. But instead of shame or humiliation, I felt something completely different.
Clarity. For years,
I had given Cassius 4 years of my life, and in one carefully orchestrated moment, he had shown me exactly who he was. Not by accident, not in the middle of an emotional outburst, but deliberately. He had planned the public execution of our relationship the way someone plans a gala. The crisp autumn air outside hit my face, and I took a deep breath. My hands weren't shaking.
my eyes were dry.
I walked to my car with measured steps, unlocked it, sat behind the wheel, and only then, in the privacy of the vehicle, did I let the full weight of what had just happened settle on me. But it wasn't devastation that flooded me. It was recognition. I had just seen Cassius show his true face, and the person I saw wasn't someone I wanted to marry. The feeling was almost liberating. My phone buzzed with a message from my best friend, Zuri. "How's lunch going?" I stared at the screen for a few seconds before typing back, "Wedding's off. Explain later. But I'm good. Actually, I'm better than good." Her reply came instantly.
What?
"I'm good. Actually, I'm better than good." Her reply came instantly.
What?
"I'm coming over tonight." I put the phone down, started the car, and as I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked one last time toward the restaurant. Through the glass, I could see Cassius still at our table with his friends gathered around. He was surely telling them I was in shock, that I hadn't processed what happened yet. He had no idea what was actually occurring. He had handed me the key to a door. I hadn't processed what happened yet. He had no idea what was actually occurring. He had handed me the key to a door I didn't even know was locked. The drive back gave me time to think, and what surfaced in my mind were all the moments I had chosen not to look at clearly over the last 4 years. I met Cassius when I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first job as an assistant event coordinator at the Georgia World Congress. He was 25, working as a marketing executive at a pharmaceutical distribution firm, confident and charming in that way that makes you feel like the only person in the room when he focuses on you. Our first date was at a coffee shop near Piedmont Park. He listened with apparent interest while I talked about my dream of one day starting my own event planning company. He nodded at the right moments, asked the right questions. Looking back now, I realize he was gathering intel, not genuinely connecting. By the end of our first year together, my life had already started revolving around his preferences. Cassius didn't care for my college friends, so I started seeing them less. He said my apartment was too far from his office, so I moved to one closer to his area. He opined that my dream of entrepreneurship was too risky and that I should focus on growing within the company I was at. So I tucked my business plan into a drawer and mentally labeled it someday. I told myself these were compromises, that relationships were about give and take. But the truth is, the one giving was almost always me. When I defended Cassius to my friends or family, I heard myself saying phrases I'd heard other women use when talking about men who didn't deserve them. He's just really stressed with work. He didn't say it like that. You don't know him like I do. My mom had pulled me aside last Christmas, her eyes full of worry. Vesper, baby, does Cassius make you happy? Truly happy? I had dodged the question with a rehearsed smile. Of course, Mama, we're getting married. But happy wasn't the word I would have chosen if I had been honest with myself.
Comfortable, maybe.
Stable. Invested in the relationship. I had given so much of myself that imagining it not working out was almost like admitting to 4 years of failure. The engagement came at the 18-month mark. Cassius proposed at his parents' 40th wedding anniversary party, getting down on one knee in front of the entire extended family in his social circle. I said yes in front of 200 people with their phones held high, recording the scene. What else could I say? I should have recognized the pattern then. Cassius loved having an audience. He enjoyed being the center of attention. He adored moments that made him look good to others. The proposal was never really about us. It was about the performance. The wedding planning turned into another series of unilateral concessions. I wanted an intimate ceremony with close family and real friends. Cassius wanted a grand event with 300 guests, most of them strangers to me. I imagined a simple venue that reflected our personalities. He insisted on a ballroom at an ultra-expensive hotel because people in his circle expected someone of his status to celebrate there. Every time I tried to set boundaries, he had a special talent for making me feel unreasonable. It's not just about you, Vesper, he would repeat. It's about our future. The people at the wedding are people we need for our careers. Our careers?
He was really talking about his.
My work as an event planner didn't depend on impressing pharmaceutical execs and their wives, but time and again, I caved because, somewhere along the way, I stopped trusting my own judgment. Cassius had a particular talent for presenting his preferences as logical necessities, while my desires were reduced to emotional whims. When I parked in front of my building, I sat in the car for a few minutes, thinking about all the subtle ways Cassius had enjoyed having power over me. I remembered that time he corrected my pronunciation at a dinner, disguising it as a joke, but ensuring everyone noticed the mistake. The way he praised me in public, but criticized me in private. My clothes, my hair, how I told stories. The plans he made without consulting me, only to act wounded if I got upset. And there was the money issue. Cassius earned more than me and never let me forget it. He paid for expensive dinners, trips, flashy gifts, but every gesture came with invisible strings. When I tried to propose something simpler or pay my share, he would shake his head. Let me handle it. You don't need to worry about money. What that really meant was I control this.
You don't get to decide.
I was so focused on making the relationship work that I didn't realize how small I was becoming inside it. The woman who dreamed of starting a business now asked for permission to go to brunch with her own girlfriends. The one who used to have strong opinions on everything now folded almost every time to Cassius's judgment. Sitting in the car, I felt the weight of those 4 years differently than I had an hour ago. This wasn't the end of a love story. It was the emergency exit I didn't know I needed. My phone buzzed again. It was Cassius. That wasn't the reaction I expected. "We need to talk." I looked at the message with my thumb hovering over the screen, and for the first time in 4 years, I didn't reply. That night, Zuri arrived at my apartment with 2 bottles of wine and a fierce determination painted on her face. "Tell me everything," she said, dropping onto the sofa. "And when I say everything, I mean everything. Don't hide a single detail." I told her about the restaurant, the announcement, his friends watching like they were at a spectator sport, the fact that he had requested that specific table, that he had insisted his friends come along, that from the moment we walked in, everyone felt prepared. Zuri's expression shifted from worry to understanding, and then to something resembling vindication. "I knew it," she whispered.
I knew there was something off about that dude. She whispered. I knew there was something off about that dude.
"You knew? You knew too, Vesper," she continued. "I've been your best friend since freshman year. I watched you change over these 4 years. The woman who used to argue with professors and stay up all night working on her business plan started asking me for permission to grab coffee. Do you know how many times I wanted to say something? I felt my face heat up. Why didn't you? Me for permission to grab coffee. Do you know how many times I wanted to say something? I felt my face heat up. Why didn't you? Because you weren't ready to hear it, she replied softly, and because I knew if I pushed too hard, he would use that to isolate you even more. I was waiting for you to see it yourself. Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. She had been there watching, waiting, protecting our friendship by avoiding a confrontation I would have rejected. The thing that bothers me the most, I admitted, speaking slowly, is that he planned it. It wasn't impulsive. He picked a public place, invited witnesses. He wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. Zuri nodded. He wanted to break you. He wanted everyone to see you fall apart, so he could look like the one in control. But I didn't break. No, she said with a faint smile. You didn't, and I bet that's driving him crazy right now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Cassius. I think you're in shock. This isn't you. Call me when you're ready, for a real conversation. What does he want?
Zuri asked.
He thinks I'm in shock. He's confused that I'm not begging him to reconsider. Zuri let out a humorless laugh. Of course. Men like Cassius expect a certain script. Crying, desperation, pleading. When they don't get that, they don't know what to do. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table. His friends were laughing at first, I told her. When I took off the ring and said I was going to throw a great escape party, they took it as a joke, like I was delirious and didn't understand what's happening. And what made them stop laughing, I thought for a moment. That I didn't crumble, that I thanked him for his honesty, and walked out with my head high. They didn't know what to do with that. Zuri poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. So, this great escape party, are you actually going to throw it? The idea had slipped out of my mouth as a reflex in the restaurant, a sort of shield born from an instinct I didn't understand in the moment. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I think so, I said, but not for the reasons he imagines, not to mock him or to create drama. I want to reclaim the narrative before he rewrites it. What do you mean? Cassius is going to tell people his version. He's going to paint himself as the hero who had to end things with a woman who wasn't right for him. He's going to make me look pathetic, crazy, or both. But if I throw a party celebrating my great escape, if I frame this as something good that happened to me, not something done to me, I take that power away. Zuri's eyes sparkled. It's brilliant. You're not the jilted fiancé crying into her pillow. You're the woman who dodged a bullet and is celebrating her freedom.
Exactly.
We talked for hours, and with each hour, more pieces fell into place. Zuri helped me see things I was too close to notice. How his compliments always had conditions. How his gestures of kindness came with expectations of gratitude. How he had slowly separated me from anyone who might question his influence. Is there anything else? I added as the night wore on. Something about how his friends were positioned in the restaurant. Tarek was recording with his phone. I saw it when I stood up. Zuri's expression hardened. He wanted video. He wanted your humiliation on film. It wasn't just a public breakup. It was a production. He wanted material he could share, something to solidify the story he was building. That's why he looked so confused when I didn't cry. My reaction wasn't good content. I didn't know yet why he wanted that video, but it was clear there was something more behind all of this. Cassius hadn't staged such a spectacle just to break up with me. There was a deeper motivation I couldn't see yet. I need to understand why, I said quietly. Not to change anything, but to know what I'm really dealing with. Zuri squeezed my hand. Whatever you find, I'm here. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. The woman I saw today in that restaurant is the one I've been waiting for years to see again. I looked at my friend, the one who had stayed by my side even when I didn't know how to defend myself, and felt for the first time something resembling hope. Tomorrow, I would start digging.
Tonight, I was just going to rest.
The following days were filled with messages from Cassius, becoming increasingly confused and then increasingly irritated. Sunday morning. This silence is childish. Call me. Sunday afternoon. I didn't do this to hurt you. We need to talk like adults.
Monday.
People are asking me what happened. You have to help me explain this. Tuesday. I heard you're telling people you're having a party. What is that? Are you trying to humiliate me? I didn't answer a single one. For the first time in 4 years, my actions didn't revolve around his comfort or his expectations. The silence felt surprisingly powerful. April, 7 months away, we had deposits on the venue, the catering, the photographer, the florist, all in my name because according to Cassius, it was easier for the paperwork, though now I suspected it was to keep his name unattached if things went south. I called the venue first. The coordinator, a woman named Mrs. Etta, whom I had worked with several times before, was sympathetic when I told her what happened. The deposit is non-refundable, honey, she said apologetically, but given the circumstances, I can offer you a credit for any future event. Actually, I replied, an idea forming. Maybe I could use the space sooner than planned. Do you have any dates next month? Mrs. Etta was surprised, but sounded intrigued. What kind of event are you planning? A celebration, I said, of new beginnings. The catering was equally understanding. The photographer offered to return half the deposit as a gesture of goodwill. The florist, Roosevelt, who had become almost a friend over the months, said he would be delighted to do arrangements for whatever I was organizing, waiving the labor fee. Every conversation reinforced something I had realized during the endless planning meetings. The people I worked with had seen things I hadn't. When I told them the wedding was off because my fiancé had broken up with me, more than one response sounded like variations of, I'm sorry, but honestly, I wondered how long it would last. What do you mean? I asked Roosevelt, the florist downtown, who had helped me look for sustainable options. Vesper, every time you came in, you were tense and apologizing, he replied. You were changing things because he wanted different colors, he replied. You were changing things because he wanted different colors, different flowers, different quantities. All brides change things, but you looked like you were trying to please someone who couldn't be pleased. And no, that's not how planning a wedding should feel. His words swirled in my head long after I hung up. By Wednesday, I had a clearer picture of the next few weeks. The Great Escape Party would be in the same hall where we would have held the wedding reception, using the deposit already paid. The date? 3 Saturdays from now. Just enough time to plan without the story getting cold. I started building the guest list, and that's where things got interesting. Cassius and I had organized the wedding together, and that's where things got interesting. Cassius and I had organized the wedding together, which meant I had access to all the shared documents, including the master guest list. While reviewing it, I found something that made me pause. There was a separate list I hadn't created or seen before. It was labeled Priority Notifications and had about 40 names. Cassius' friends, colleagues, some of his relatives I barely knew. Next to each name was a note. Update wedding. Send immediately. I checked the document's version history and felt my stomach knot. Cassius had created that list 2 weeks before the lunch on Saturday. 2 weeks before breaking up with me. He had been planning his big announcement for at least 14 days. The parallel list suggested he had a specific message prepared for those people, something he wanted them to receive right after the breakup. I kept digging through our shared cloud files and found the draft of the message he planned to send. As some of you witnessed today, I made the difficult decision to end my engagement to Vesper. It wasn't easy, but I understood that I couldn't commit to a future with someone who doesn't share my values and goals. I appreciate your support during this time and hope you respect my need for privacy while I move forward. The text presented him as sensible and brave, me as the problem. There was more. In his sent folder, I found messages to his friends from that very morning before we arrived at the restaurant. Today is the day. Meet me at the bistro at 12:30. I want you guys there to see. And Tark's response? Finally. Been waiting for this. I'm going to record everything. They had planned it together. And Tark's response? This time to someone named Sienna, sent the night before. Tomorrow, I end it with Vesper. I know you've been patient. I can't wait to be free and start our new chapter. Sienna. I didn't know any Sienna, but he clearly did. Enough to talk about a new chapter while still engaged to me. I leaned back in my chair, trying to digest it all. It wasn't just that he had planned the breakup. He had mounted a full campaign. He had a replacement lined up, an audience gathered, a narrative ready, and a desire to get evidence of my supposed breakdown. The only thing he hadn't foreseen was that I would refuse to break. My phone buzzed again with another message from him. I don't understand why you're ignoring me. This isn't healthy. For the first time since Saturday, I replied, I'm not ignoring you. I'm simply no longer having conversations that only serve your needs and go against mine. I think we're done talking. His response came immediately. So cold. I expected more from you. I turned off my phone and went back to the documents. There was more to discover, and I intended to find it. As I continued investigating, the picture became sharper. Cassius had spent months, not weeks, preparing his exit. The evidence was scattered across documents, emails, and logs from our shared phone account. Little breadcrumbs that I, trusting as I was, hadn't wanted to see. Sienna wasn't a recent development. Looking calmly through the call logs, I saw they had been communicating since early summer, 5 months before the scene in the restaurant. The calls, short and infrequent at first, became longer and more regular over time. I couldn't see the texts, but I didn't need to. The pattern was clear. He had been cultivating another relationship while still engaged to me, and the public breakup wasn't an ending, but a transition. What I still didn't understand was why it had to be so public. If he wanted to leave with someone else, he could have done it in private. The theater at the restaurant pointed to something else. The answer came from an unexpected source. Zuri called me Thursday afternoon, her voice tight with surprise. I just found out something you need to know. A coworker is friends with Tarik's girlfriend, and apparently there's been a lot of talk in their circle about Saturday.
What are they saying?
According to this girl, Cassius has been telling his friends for months that you're emotionally unstable, that you're clingy, controlling, that you make scenes when you don't get your way, that he's scared of you.
What?
How could he? Wait, Zuri cut in. He told them he was afraid of how you might react if he broke up with you in private. I felt the air escape my lungs. That's not true. None of that is true. I know, Zuri said firmly. But that's the narrative he was building. The public breakup wasn't just for show. He did it to have witnesses. He wanted them to see how you reacted so he could use it as proof of your instability. But I didn't react how he expected.
Exactly.
And that's why he's desperate. His whole plan depended on you having a meltdown in front of everyone. Since you didn't, his story stopped adding up. I remembered Tarik holding his phone up. He wanted video evidence, I concluded. Proof that he was right to leave me. Proof of how crazy I supposedly am. Instead, he has a video of me thanking him and leaving with dignity. The level of manipulation was more elaborate than I had imagined. Cassius hadn't just planned a breakup.
He had built a case against me.
He had spent months constructing his role as the victim escaping a difficult relationship. Every element was calculated, The location, the witnesses, the recording, the pre-written messages to his people. And I, by not following his script, had torn down the entire set. I hung up with Zuri and sat thinking about all the times in 4 years Cassius had told me what others supposedly thought of me. Your friends say you're too intense. My mom thinks you aren't ambitious enough. A colleague mentioned you look distant in meetings. I had absorbed those comments, changed my behavior, tried to fix problems that maybe didn't even exist. It never occurred to me that he was the one planting those perceptions, poisoning opinions, building a dossier against me brick by brick. The magnitude of the deception was overwhelming. This wasn't simply a relationship that didn't work. It was a relationship where one person systematically manipulated the other while preparing an exit designed to destroy her reputation. But there was a detail Cassius hadn't foreseen. I still had access to everything, our documents, our accounts, our communication history. In his arrogance, he never bothered to block me. He assumed I'd be too devastated to do anything practical, too sunken in grief to review the evidence he'd left lying around everywhere. He underestimated me. Maybe he had been doing that from the start. I opened my laptop and started organizing everything I had found. The timeline of his affair with Sienna, the messages with his friends planning the public breakup, the draft of the statement to control the narrative, the call logs marking months of contact with her. I didn't plan to post any of this on social media. That would have made me look vindictive and given him ammunition to keep his story going that I was unhinged. Instead, I was going to do something subtler and, in the long run, more powerful. Let the truth speak for itself. The Great Escape Party wasn't going to be about Cassius. It was going to be about me, about my freedom, my future, my right to tell my own story. But if certain facts came to light in the process, it would simply be the truth finding its way out. I started drafting the invitation. I wouldn't mention his name nor speak directly of the breakup. I would only invite people to celebrate a new chapter in my life, to mark the closing of a door and the opening of another. The guest list would include my real friends, my family, my coworkers, but also some of the people Cassius had been cultivating as witnesses to my supposed breakdown. Let them come see me triumph. Let them compare the woman he talked about with the woman standing in front of them, and if anyone asked what had happened, I would tell the truth. Without exaggerating, without theatrical outbursts, just the facts, backed by documents. The truth, I understood, was my strongest weapon. I didn't need to embellish it. He had done enough damage on his own. I just had to help others see clearly. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity that kept my mind more on logistics than on the emotional abyss. I threw myself into organizing the party with an energy I hadn't felt in years. All my training as an event coordinator was finally being put to use for something I actually wanted. Instead of white tablecloths and centerpieces designed for a traditional wedding, I ordered bold colors and eclectic decorations that finally reflected my real taste, the taste I had softened for years to fit Cassius' sober preferences. The guest list grew as word spread among my true friendships. People I had barely spoken to since starting the relationship began texting me, hearing through third parties that something had changed in my life. One of the calls was from Imani, my college roommate from Spelman, who now lived in Los Angeles. Vesper, I just heard you called off the wedding. Are you okay? I didn't call it off, I clarified gently. Cassius broke up with me in the middle of a restaurant in front of witnesses. There was a brief silence. He did what? Actually, I'm fine, I said, and it surprised me to realize I meant it. It's the best thing that could have happened, even if that wasn't his intention. Imani took a few seconds to reply. I'm going to be honest with you. I was scared. Every time I talked to you, you sounded dimmer, like less you. I was hoping one day you'd wake up and see what was happening. Her comment resonated with what Zuri, Roosevelt, the photographer, and the caterer had already told me. How many people had been watching me shrink without daring to say anything? Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked without reproach, just with curiosity. Because you would have defended him, Imani answered. You would have justified it and pulled away from us. We were waiting for you to be ready. That word kept coming back, ready. I wasn't ready until Cassius unmasked himself in such a public, calculated way that not even my habit of justifying him could survive. The invitation design came together quickly. A door ajar, light spilling from inside, and the text. You are invited to celebrate a new beginning with Vesper. Join me in toasting to the next chapter of my life. No grooms, no broken weddings, no failed promises, just forward motion. But beneath the celebration, I was preparing something else. I thought about the people who would be there. My friends would go to support me, but I knew the rumor would reach Cassius's circle too. Some would come out of curiosity, others for the gossip, a few to report back to him what they had seen. I wanted everyone to encounter a very concrete version of me, not broken, not resentful, but genuinely rebuilding and standing tall. I wanted them to perceive the distance between the unstable and clingy Vesper of his story and the confident woman organizing her own party. I also wanted them to hear the truth if they asked. I prepared key points in my head, not memorized answers, but clear summaries of what occurred. If someone asked about the wedding, I would explain without drama that Cassius had ended things in a restaurant surrounded by friends he invited expressly to witness it. If they insisted, I would mention the prepared message, the video, the parallel relationship with Sienna. I wasn't going to bring the subject up, but I didn't plan on hiding it either. Mrs. Etta at the venue helped me with the final details. We set the day for the third Saturday in October, exactly 3 weeks after the lunch at the bistro. The list climbed to about 70 guests, a mix of friends, family, and colleagues who had watched me lose myself a little during those years. My mom flew in from Chicago 2 days before. As soon as she saw me, she broke down crying. "Mama," I said, hugging her. "I'm fine, really." "I know," she replied, wiping her tears. "That's why I'm crying. I've been so worried, and now I finally see my daughter again." She helped me with the final preparations, and we talked with more honesty than we had in a long time. She confessed the conversations with my dad, the doubts about whether they should intervene, the painful decision to wait for me, to find the exit myself. "I prayed for something like this," she admitted. "Not the humiliation, but the clarity.
I wanted you to see him as he really is."
"Well, he certainly showed me," I said. The night before the party, I received one last message from Cassius, longer than the others, with a tone almost desperate. "I've heard things about this party you're planning. People are talking. I think you're making a mistake. Whatever you think you're going to say about me, remember I have my version too. I've been patient, but if you try to make me look bad, I'm going to respond. Think carefully about what you're doing." I read it twice, then deleted it without replying. He was afraid. He felt the narrative slipping through his fingers and didn't know how to get it back. He had spent months building the story of poor Cassius, victim of an unstable Vesper. But the woman people were seeing now didn't fit that caricature. I went to bed feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation, not fear, not anxiety, not the eternal calculation of his reactions, just an eagerness to see what would come next. The invitations had gone out on a Tuesday, and by Thursday the call started. People who had been at the bistro that Saturday were reaching out to mutual acquaintances to find out what was going on. The invitation itself was innocent, but combined with the rumors, it raised questions. Tarek's girlfriend texted a friend, who then texted Zuri trying to find out what I was planning. Dante's wife called a coworker of mine, fishing for information on my emotional state. Even people I had barely exchanged 2 words with suddenly showed an enormous interest in attending. Cassius, meanwhile, was juggling. I knew from various sources that he had spent the week calling people, trying to get ahead of whatever story he thought I was going to tell. He presented the party as proof of my imbalance. Who organizes a celebration 3 weeks after getting dumped in public? He said it was a crisis, a cry for attention, that they shouldn't feed my behavior by attending. His warnings had the opposite effect. Every person he called became more curious. When they compared his frantic explanations with the image they held of me walking calmly out of the restaurant, the math didn't add up. The day before the party, I received an unexpected call. Cassius's younger sister, Amara. "Vesper," she said cautiously. "I heard what happened, and I heard you're organizing a party. I wanted to know how you are." We had never been very close. I understood now that he had preferred to keep me at a certain distance from his family, but she was always kind at gatherings. "I appreciate you calling," I replied. "I'm good, truly." I don't know everything that happened between you and my brother, she continued. He has his version, and I guess you have yours. But I want you to know I never believed what he said about you. What did he say? There was a pause. That you were difficult, emotional. That he was scared to leave you, because of how you might react. She took a breath. But Vesper, I saw you at family gatherings for 4 years. You were never any of that. You were accommodating, almost to the point where it was uncomfortable. I actually wondered why you never pushed back on anything. Her words touched something deep. I didn't do it because I thought that was what loving was, I murmured. I know, she said quietly, and I'm sorry no one said anything to you sooner. My mom has been asking questions since last week, and I think she's starting to see it differently, too. When I hung up, I sat for a long while thinking about that crack in Cassius's wall. If his own sister doubted the story, how many others would soon follow? The hall looked beautiful when I arrived Saturday evening for the final check. The place that was going to be the setting for a wedding that no longer existed had transformed into something vibrant and personal. The colors were warm and intense, deep oranges, rich purples. The colors were warm and intense, deep oranges, rich purples, touches of gold. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling, and the centerpieces mixed sunflowers with wildflowers instead of the flawless white roses Cassius had chosen. My mom found me standing in the middle of the room, spinning slowly. How do you feel? She asked. Free? I answered. I feel free. Guests started arriving at 7. First Suri appeared, then Imani, who had flown in from LA, and then a steady stream of faces I hadn't seen in years. College friends from the AUC, former coworkers, cousins and aunts who had always wished me well, but whom I had kept at a distance at Cassius' insistence. Every arrival was a sort of homecoming. These were my people, the ones he claimed didn't understand our relationship, who were negative, whom I should focus less on in favor of our life together. And yet, there they were, coming back to me, without reproach. By 8 o'clock, the room was full and the energy was exactly what I had imagined. Warm, festive, genuinely joyful. People were laughing, picking up conversations from years ago, asking me about my future plans, and little by little, the inevitable questions began. Okay, tell me the truth, Imani said, pulling me into a corner. What he's saying doesn't match the woman I'm seeing today. I took a deep breath and told her. The planned breakup, the witnesses, the recording, the relationship with Sienna that had been going on for months, the pre-written messages. I showed her a few screenshots I had saved on my phone, not projected for everyone but available for anyone who asked. I watched her face go from disbelief to rage, and finally, disgust. That is psychopathic, she said finally. He literally staged your humiliation. He did. I nodded. But he also miscalculated. He counted on me shattering. I didn't. The story began to run through the party faster than I imagined. By 9, there were small groups talking seriously, phones passing from hand to hand, expressions changing as the pieces aligned. I didn't have to do anything grand. I just answered questions calmly and let people see what they wanted to see. The turning point came when Mia, Dante's wife, approached me. She had been at the bistro sitting with Cassius's group of friends, watching the scene from their table. Vesper, she said, her voice tight. I owe you an apology. I looked at her, not knowing what to expect. When Cassius told us what he was going to do, Dante painted it like some kind of intervention. He said your relationship was bad for him and that he needed support from friends to end it. I didn't know about the recording. I didn't know about Sienna. I thought we were helping a friend get out of something toxic, and now... She swallowed hard. Now I feel sick. I was part of something cruel, and I didn't even see it. The way you stood tall that day hasn't left my mind all week. That is not how someone unstable reacts. Naya wasn't the only one with revelations. Throughout the rest of the night, I heard similar stories. I learned that Tark was being questioned by his girlfriend about why he had participated, that Omari was avoiding answering Cassius's texts. The circle he had gathered to witness my fall was beginning to distance itself from the man who had set up the show. And then, around 10 o'clock, he appeared. I saw him before he saw me, standing in the entrance of the hall, scanning the room with barely contained fury. He was wearing the shirt I had bought him for his birthday. A detail I couldn't tell was coincidence or provocation. The hum of the party didn't die out completely, but the air changed. Several conversations cut off. Eyes turned to him as he advanced toward me. "Vesper," he said, voice tight. "Can I ask what you think you're doing?" I turned to face him, keeping my expression serene. "I'm throwing a party, Cassius. You aren't invited. You're trying to destroy me," he spat. "You're telling everyone lies. You're showing manipulated things." "I haven't said anything that isn't true," I replied. "And everything I've shown came from our shared files you created." His face paled for an instant, then flushed red. "The same things I always had access to. The same things you never bothered to protect because you assumed I'd be too broken to do anything." Around us, people were no longer pretending not to listen. Nia was staring at us with wide eyes. Imani, a few feet away, had her phone in hand, clearly recording. "This is crazy," Cassius said, raising his volume. "You're crazy. This is exactly what I told everyone. You're unstable, vindictive." "Cassius," I interrupted, raising a hand. "Look around. Look at the faces of the people who knew me before you. Do you really think they see me that way? That they buy that story after what they've seen?" He looked around the room. What he found were gazes that oscillated between disappointment and contempt. "You planned to humiliate me in public," I continued, not raising my voice. "You had your friends record it. You had messages ready before that lunch. You spent months friends recorded. You had messages ready before that lunch. You spent months on your affair with Sienna while still engaged to me. All of that is documented. All of it is true. You don't understand," he started, but there was no conviction in his words anymore. "I understand perfectly," I replied. "You needed me to fall to pieces so you could point to my pain as proof that you were right to leave me. Since I didn't give you that show, you lost control of the narrative, and now you walk into a party you weren't invited to, trying to get it back, and you just finished proving to everyone who you really are." The silence that followed was relentless. "You really are." The silence that followed was relentless. Cassius looked around again, saw how the stares held, how no one came to his defense. In the end, he turned around and walked out. The party continued after his exit, but the atmosphere had changed subtly. There was a sense of collective exhalation, as if everyone had witnessed something important and was processing it together. Many people approached me during the remainder of the night, some to apologize for believing his version, others to tell me they admired the calm with which I handled everything. I thanked them for their words, but what I felt wasn't triumph or vengeance. It was peace. The live band I had hired started playing, and the dance floor filled with beloved faces. My mom was dancing with my uncle. Zuri was teaching Imani a ridiculous dance move from our college days. Coworkers chatted animatedly with relatives they hadn't seen in ages. Here was the life I could have. Not shrunken, not diminished, not ordered around the whims of a man, but broad, connected, authentic. The party ended near midnight. As the last guests were leaving, Imani hugged me tight. "I knew you'd come back to yourself," she said. "I just didn't imagine it would be like this." "Me neither," I admitted. "But I'm glad it happened." In the weeks that followed, the ripples of impact continued to spread. Cassius's carefully polished image began to crack in his professional circle. The story, filtered little by little through mutual acquaintances, no longer showed him as the victim he tried to be. I learned that Sienna ended things with him when she found out everything. Tariq and Omari drifted away quietly. Nia, Dante's wife, asked for a divorce 3 months later, citing that episode as the start of her own questions about her marriage. As for Cassius, I heard scraps of news that he was struggling to repair his relationships, that some doors that used to open easily now stayed ajar. The figure of the successful, integral professional, victim of an unbalanced ex, had been dismantled piece by piece. People remembered his furious interruption at my party, the way his accusations fell apart in the face of facts, the difference between the Vesper he described and the Vesper they saw in front of them. I, for my part, stopped keeping track of him over time. Once the party was over and the truth found its way out, my attention shifted completely to my future. The dream of starting my own event company began to beat again, this time without excuses. I quit my job at the convention center and started building something of my own, according to my vision, and not what someone else thought was prudent. Within 6 months, I had my first clients. Within a year, I had more commissions than I could handle alone. The relationships I had neglected during my time with Cassius were restored little by little. Dormant friendships woke up. Family I had kept on the margins came close again. I learned that those who really loved me never left. They just waited for me to stop pushing them away. And I learned something else. The version of me Cassius tried to mold, the small, compliant, manageable woman who asked permission for everything and apologized for existing, was never my true self. It was a costume I put on because I thought that was what love was. I discovered that real love doesn't demand you make yourself small. Real love celebrates you being who you are. 1 year after that Saturday lunch, I was in my new office reviewing contracts when I decided to look back. I found out through acquaintances that the pharmaceutical company where Cassius worked had restructured his department 6 months after the party, and he was on the list of those let go. His precious professional network, the one he loved to show off to so much, became a problem when the story of what he had done kept circulating. In the end, they told me he moved to another city, trying to start from scratch where no one knew who he was. Meanwhile, some of his old friends faced their own reckonings. Tarek's girlfriend left him when she understood to what extent he had participated in the plan to humiliate me. Dante's marriage fell apart when Nia started wondering what other things she had been complicit in without realizing. That afternoon, locking the office door and stepping out into the fresh autumn air, I thought about the path that had brought me there. A year ago, I was sitting in a restaurant watching the man I thought I loved announce loudly and in front of strangers that he didn't love me anymore. I felt every eye on me, the weight of the expectation that I would break, that I would cry, that I would confirm every word he had planted about me. Instead, I smiled and thanked him for his honesty. That moment Cassius had designed as my destruction was the first step toward my freedom. Today, if I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing. The Great Escape Party was never about revenge. It was my way of reclaiming my life and deciding that never again would I apologize for being exactly who I am destined to be. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.